Okay, so here we're explaining a writing and language passage taken from the April 2021 SAT practice test. Questions 23 to 33 are based on the following passage and supplementary material. So we have here the engineering the future of wind energy. So this passage is about engineering the future of wind energy. It's very important for you to do some active reading while highlighting the keywords. So in these kind of passages, you have to read the whole passage and you have to stop step by step to see and check the best way to edit this passage. From 2010 to 2016, so these are the years we're talking about, the amount of electrical power produced by wind in the United States more than doubled. So we're talking about the amount of electrical power produced by wind in the United States specifically. And we're saying that it doubled. As the market for wind power has inflated. So in order to deal with such portions, let's not take a look first at the options. Let's try to think whether the word inflated here is suitable or not. So when we're talking about a market, so we're not talking about inflation, we're talking about expansion. Inflation, we can use inflation with economy, let's say, but not with expanding markets. So here the word inflated doesn't really sound right. So if we take a look at the options now that we have an answer in our minds, we can see that we have expanded, lengthened, and bolstered. Expanded is the one that is the most suitable one, and it's more compatible with what we have already anticipated as an answer. So, has the need for experts who can design and build safe and efficient wind farms. Nevertheless, engineers are needed to work on the next generation of wind turbine, large windmill type devices that generate electrical power from wind. So here the word nevertheless. Usually nevertheless is used to show the opposite meaning, whereas here it's not the opposite meaning that we're trying to say. We're trying to be more specific by saying which experts here we're talking about. We're talking about engineers who are needed to work on the next generation of wind turbine. So the use of nevertheless here is not quite suitable. So if we take a look at the options now and we see that we have specifically, it's not instead, it's not finally, it's specifically, because we're actually specifying the kinds of experts needed for such a job. We move on and we continue are needed to work on the next generation of wind turbine, the large windmill type devices that generate electrical power from wind. Improvements in these devices have resulted in enormous increases in the amount of power a wind turbine can generate, but further advances are needed. One way to increase the output of wind farms is to create new turbines that have longer rotor blades. So here we're talking about rotor blades than previous models had. Data from the European Wind Energy Association show a consistent trend in this direction since the 1980s. The trend is that turbine rotor diameters increase every few years. So here we can, without even looking at the answer at the question, we can discover on our own that there's a kind of repetition. So here there's the trend. So this doesn't really seem to be a good structure. So I believe the question should be to combine these two sentences in order to avoid such a repetition. So if we go to question 25, which choice most effectively combines the sentences at the underlined portion? So here we can actually read the options and try to figure out which one is the best one. So if we start with A, we can directly notice that there's another repetition. So A could be eliminated in this case. We can directly eliminate an answer, which will facilitate, it will facilitate the process of choosing the correct answer. B, trend since the 1980s consisting of turbine rotors increasing in diameter in this direction every few years since then. This could be right, but it's a bit complicated. Consistent trend in this direction since the 1980s, with turbine rotor diameters increasing every few years. Here there's also a correct answer, a probable correct answer, so we're going to keep it. D, consistent trend in turbine rotor diameters, where turbine rotor diameters since the 1980s increase every few years in this direction. Here's another repetition. Trend in turbine rotor diameters, turbine rotor diameters. So this one is also to be eliminated as an answer. It's not quite accurate, and there's another repetition being used. So we're stuck between B and C. Since B is quite complicated, so we're gonna choose C. So C, we're gonna choose C as the correct answer. If you read the sentence from the beginning, data from the European Wind Energy Association show a consistent trend in this direction since the 1980s, with turbine rotor diameters increasing every few years. This seems to be the best answer.